Clodson, I have made the most extraordinary deduction, one that reveals the very foundation of how these marvelous mechanical contraptions actually function.
Oh dear, Holmes, another earth-shattering discovery? What have you deduced this time?
Through my powers of observation, I have uncovered what I call the prime directive of information. You see, these devices, these computing devices, they are absolutely, utterly obsessed with what I call structure.
Structure, Holmes? What sort of structure?
Every piece of information, every instruction, every morsel of data must be arranged in exactly the right way. Or these devices throw what can only be described as mechanical tantrums. It's like, have you ever tried assembling furniture from that newfangled Swedish furniture company?
IK something. Oh my, yes, those instruction manuals are quite particular, aren't they?
Precisely. Miss one tiny screw, put one wooden peg in the wrong hole, and suddenly your bookshelf looks like abstract art. But these mechanical devices make those furniture assembly instructions seem positively relaxed. They demand absolute, mathematical precision.
That does sound rather demanding. Though I must say, Holmes, I recall you once spent an hour trying to build a simple chair because you insisted the instructions were wrong.
The instructions were misleading, but that's precisely my point, Clodson. These devices are even more persnickety than you think I am. Consider this. You filled out forms online, yes?
Unfortunately, yes. Rather tedious affairs.
And have you ever had the maddening experience where you're typing your email address, and before you've even finished, the blasted thing starts complaining that it's not in the proper format?
Oh, how infuriating. Yes, it's like it's watching over your shoulder, tutting disapprovingly before you've had a chance to complete your thought or act.
Exactly. Or when you're trying to enter a phone number and you include the dashes like any civilized person would, but the machine huffs and puffs because it wants only numbers. No spaces, no dashes, no common sense formatting.
Rather like a very pedantic butler who refuses to serve tea unless you ask in precisely the right words.
Brilliant analogy. Except this butler would rather starve you than serve improperly requested refreshments. These devices operate on what I call the principle of absolute precision. Miss one comma, one semicolon, one tiny detail, and they reject your entire request with the mechanical equivalent of a sniff.
But Holmes, surely there's a method to this madness? There must be some benefit to being so exacting.
Ah, my dear Clodson, it all ties back to that deterministic nature we've discussed previously. These machines promise us that if we give them identical instructions, we'll get identical results. But this miracle can only occur if the instructions themselves are crystal clear, unambiguous, and utterly precise.
I see. Rather like baking, isn't it? A pinch of salt versus a tablespoon can make quite a difference in the final cake.
Precisely, except these mechanical minds are even more finicky than the most temperamental souffle. But Clodson, this leads me to an even more profound observation about the very nature of information itself.
Oh, do tell, Holmes. What have you observed about information?
I have deduced that all information in existence can be divided into two fundamental categories. There is what I call structured information, the kind these devices crave. And then there is unstructured information, which is frankly everything else.
Everything else? That sounds like rather a lot, Holmes.
Indeed it is. Consider this. When you fill out a form at the bank, they want your name in one precise box, your address in another, your income as an exact number. That's structured. But when you tell your neighbor about your day, you ramble about the weather, mention that peculiar smell near the bakery, complain about your nephew.
Rather like how I'm telling you about things, you mean.
Exactly. Natural, human, gloriously messy communication. Or think about photographs. When you catalog a picture for filing, you might write John Smith, Garden Party, 1895. But the actual photograph, it's got someone's elbow in the corner, a dog wandering through, clouds shaped like, well, clouds.
I see what you mean. The real world doesn't seem to organize itself very tidily, does it?
Precisely. Most of reality is stubbornly, magnificently unstructured. Your handwritten shopping list, the way you actually give directions to someone, the stories people tell, the notes you scribble in the margins of books.
Though I must say, Holmes, your own notes are particularly creative in their organization. Remember when you wrote, "Important clue about the missing emerald," on your breakfast menu?
That was a perfectly logical notation system. But you've touched upon the central paradox, Clodson. Here we have these marvelous machines that demand everything be presented in neat, tidy, structured formats.
Yes?
What the vast majority of human knowledge, human experience, human information, is wonderfully, chaotically unstructured. It's like trying to force a flowing river into a series of precise measuring cups.
That does seem rather backwards, doesn't it? Shouldn't our tools work with how we naturally think and communicate, rather than forcing us to translate everything into their preferred format?
Ah, you've hit upon the great injustice of our age, Clodson. Here we are, the masters, bending ourselves into contortions to satisfy the rigid expectations of our supposedly subservient devices.
It does seem rather topsy-turvy, doesn't it, Holmes? Though I suppose someone must be managing to work with these demanding machines.
Indeed they are, Clodson. There exists among us a most distinguished class of individuals who have elevated themselves through mastery of these mechanical strictures. Behold, the high priesthood of programmers.
High priesthood? That sounds rather exclusive, Holmes.
As it should be. We are the ascetics of precision, the mystics of structure. We have spent years training our minds to think in the exact, rigid patterns demanded by these machines. We speak in secretly guarded coding systems, named after things like coffee and snakes.
How peculiar. And did you say we, Holmes?
Naturally. I have achieved considerable rank within this sacred order. We perform elaborate rituals of squashing bugs, searching through thousands of lines of mystical symbols for a single misplaced character, like ancient scholars deciphering lost prophecies.
I see. Though I seem to recall you once threw your hat at the wall and declared that these infernal brackets have formed a conspiracy against me. Was that part of the ritual?
That was, well, advanced mystical practice. The point is, Clodson, we members of this elite brotherhood have developed the extraordinary ability to communicate with these machines in their own rigid tongue.
Rather like learning to speak a very demanding foreign language, then.
In a sense, yes. Though infinitely more challenging. These machines understand only the most precise symbolic hieroglyphics. Miss a single punctuation mark, and they reject your entire communication with mechanical disdain.
But, Holmes, didn't you spend an entire weekend trying to make a simple calculator, only to discover you'd been putting semicolons in the wrong places?
Semicolons were strategically misplaced for experimental purposes. But you've touched upon something important, Clodson. Even we in the high priesthood must constantly humble ourselves before these demanding mechanical overlords.
That does sound rather exhausting, Holmes. Surely there must be a better way.
Ah, that brings me to my most extraordinary deduction about how to solve this entire predicament, my dear fellow.
Another deduction, Holmes. What have you worked out?
I have deduced the perfect solution to our structured versus unstructured dilemma. You see, we already possess these remarkable machine minds, these artifacts of intelligence, the ones that operate on semantic principles we've previously discussed, and they can bridge this gap.
Oh, how so, Holmes?
Elementary, my dear Clodson. These machine minds, unlike their rigid conventional cousins, can actually interpret our gloriously messy, unstructured reality. They understand meaning, context, the semantic relationships between concepts.
You mean they could understand when I tell them find that mail about the thing with the red letterhead from sometime last month?
Precisely. These artifacts of intelligence can take our rambling, unstructured communications and still deliver the precise, deterministic results we expect. They can handle your handwritten shopping lists, your photograph descriptions, your margin notes, all while maintaining the reliability of conventional machines.
That does sound like having one's cake and eating it too, Holmes.
The best of both worlds, Clodson. Machine intelligence serves as the perfect translator between our wonderfully chaotic human reality and the obsessively structured demands of conventional systems.
Rather like having a very clever interpreter who speaks both human muddle and machine precision.
Brilliant. And I can see that industry will simply analyze all this unstructured data, convert it to structured formats using machine intelligence, and voila, problem solved. No more forcing humans to conform to mechanical strictures.
But Holmes, wouldn't that rather put you and your fellow high priests out of business?
Nonsense. We'll become the masters of this new paradigm. I predict machine intelligence will simply sweep in and solve all these problems, effortlessly bridging the gap while delivering perfect outcomes.
That sounds almost too good to be true, Holmes. Are you quite certain it will be that effortless?
Effortless? Well, naturally there might be some minor technical adjustments required, but the principle is sound, Claudson.
I see. Though I'm curious, Holmes, if machine intelligence is so good at understanding unstructured information, can it also guarantee the same deterministic results we expect from conventional machines?
Well, that is to say, the machine minds are remarkably capable, but they do operate on those probabilistic principles we've discussed. They're not quite as predictably precise as conventional devices.
So they can understand our messy human communication, but they might give different answers each time?
Precisely. I mean, not precisely, obviously, but that's a mere detail. The important thing is that machine intelligence will revolutionize everything by bridging the gap.
Of course. Though didn't you mention last week that your machine intelligence assistant gave you 3 different summaries of the same case?
Those were creative interpretations. The point is, industry experts are undoubtedly working out these minor wrinkles as we speak. Any day now, they'll have solved the perfect combination of machine intelligence and conventional systems.
Though I recall reading that many companies have been working on this problem for quite some time now, and the expectation that machine intelligence would simply take over and handle everything hasn't come to pass?
Well, yes, there may have been some overly optimistic projections about the timeline, but surely it's just a matter of connecting the right components together.
Rather like your furniture assembling based on funny instructions project, you mean? Where all the pieces were supposedly designed to fit together perfectly.
That's entirely different. Although, I admit, finding the right combination of machine intelligence and conventional systems has proven more complex than initially anticipated.
I imagine it would be. After all, you'd need the machine minds to understand our messy reality, but also somehow work reliably with all the existing structured systems we've already built, wouldn't you?
Precisely the challenge. We can't simply abandon all our existing infrastructure, the conventional machines, the databases, the carefully structured systems that run everything. But integrating machine intelligence with all of that, well, it's proving to be quite the puzzle.
Like trying to teach a very creative translator to work with a very pedantic accountant.
An apt analogy, and I suppose, I must admit, many brilliant minds are still working on exactly how to solve this integration challenge. The best combination remains, shall we say, a work in progress.
Though now that I think about it, Holmes, don't we already have something of a working example right here? Mrs. Hudson manages to take your rather unstructured requests and somehow deliver exactly what you need.
Mrs. Hudson, don't be ridiculous, Clodson. She's simply a housekeeper, not a technological marvel bridging the gap between.
Well, consider this morning. You mumbled something about that correspondence about the peculiar incident with the weather vane filed somewhere near the window, and within minutes she handed you the exact letter you needed, properly organized and categorized.
That's merely efficient household management. It has nothing to do with. Wait.
She takes your wonderfully unstructured rambling and somehow translates it into precisely structured results. Rather like your machine intelligence bridge, wouldn't you say?
Well, more tea, Mrs. Hudson.